2023 was a great year for gaming, as a slew of highly anticipated games that were delayed came out, as well as a few stinkers slipping through. Today I'm ranking every game I played in 2023. Gaming is a wide category, and it's hard to rank games against one another. For me, a main benchmark for ranking is how likely I'd recommend a game to someone looking for a game in that genre. If it's one of the top games in the genre or archetype, it's going to rank very highly. No game on this list do I think is bad. I would have had a bad tier if I thought so. So starting off with our first game, we have Killzone Shadowfall, PS4 launch title. This one's going in meh for me, specifically the single player, because I didn't bother with the multiplayer, and I'm sure that was very fun 10 years ago. The best thing going for this game is its environmental design. The world of Killzone has always been its strong point, and this game holds up visually for a PS4 launch title. Where this game ranks low for me is its exploration and level design. By exploration, I mean getting the unlockables as well as the progression through the level itself. There is some unique movement options here, like a zip line, but I found this was more helpful in early open area levels than later in the game where there's more corridor gunfights and levels like that. The gun variety here was also lacking. You have a loadout of just 2 guns and you can't drop your main rifle. Unlike this next game, Doom 2016, which offered a lot to the Quake engine formula. I would recommend Doom. I played this after Killzone because I wanted a fun arena shooter and exploration FPS adventure game. The Doom reboot series has got to be some of my favorite games in the last decade. It really delivers in weapons, gameplay, level design, and is a masterclass in first-person animation and making the player feel powerful with the weight and brutality of the Slayer. Thanks to things like movement and chainsaw and glory kill mechanics for ammo and health, there's a flow to cycling many abilities, and it's like playing a first-person Devil May Cry. Add in some fun boss fights, and Doom is very easy to recommend for single-player FPS games. The modern Doom series is everything I want to see when it comes to rewarding exploration, looking around the map for secrets and collectibles, which puts Doom in a similar archetype of game to Metroid Prime now that I think about it. Moving on to JRPGs, Crisis Core FF7 Reunion goes under okay because it falls short in terms of gameplay and repetition. I love this game, but why I ranked it low, I think you'll start to understand my ranking system better. It's basically a Final Fantasy mobile game, a weird slot machine system for abilities, and that's because it actually was a mobile game for the PSP. This 17-year-old game is remade beautifully, and it's not a dumb full-price remaster, thank God. I highly recommend it to anyone that likes Final Fantasy VII story, its world, characters, or you just like 2010's era of writing. But that's the thing, I'd only recommend it to FF7 fans, and only after they've played the remake series or the original. If someone just wants to play Final Fantasy, there's tons of other great games in the franchise they could be playing before Crisis Core. Story mode is pretty short, which is good if someone just wants to see the story, and most of the content is in the grindy soldier missions, because small missions with familiar levels is good for mobile games. Let's talk about another JRPG, Dark Souls Remastered. I consider Souls-like JRPGs. They are if you really think about it.
I recommend Dark Souls Remastered.
This game really cemented the Souls-like genre. It's an absolute classic. What more can be said? But every time I've been hearing about Dark Souls over the years, it gave off the impression that the selling point is rewarding, difficult gameplay, and learning boss patterns. But after playing Elden Ring and now Dark Souls, the progression, exploration, and levels are what makes these games amazing. Dark Souls 1 has very focused level design and small areas that feel massive on approach, but that you'll soon get very acquainted to as you explore. I love how in Souls games there's a lot of player expression with the equipment for different builds and playstyles, and it overall makes it a very fun RPG to see how abilities and stats interact and scale with one another. Dark Souls Remastered is a perfect Souls-like entry due to its moderate scale and level design. Also, maybe not going in blind and looking up things if you're new to Souls to understand the leveling system and things like how to get equipment and spells for your build. This one's a timeless classic again and is basically FromSoft's Mario 64 or Resident Evil 4. Now to an RPG from a Western studio, Bethesda, Starfield. I didn't feel like this game had a lot of player expression through its builds or equipment or mechanics. I didn't want to rank it so low, but it's going in meh relative to me playing the release version of this game on Xbox. Many issues I had with Starfield comes to quality of life things like inventory management, mini-maps not being there, and an annoying food item heal system, which they've made better since I played. The level design and environmental design as an extension actually sucked, not only because of procedurally generated planets, but also base raids are limited to a few layouts on different planets that repeat. I was sad the only alien hive dungeon I looted was in a story mission, and I was expecting way more variety in the dungeons than just different groups of humans to shoot. I was extremely underwhelmed with the variety of exploring different planets. The main missions offered variety, but the main story is pretty short. It's kind of short like Skyrim, I guess. Also like Skyrim, there are these starborn abilities that are similar to the dragon words, except instead of like in Skyrim where you go through a unique dungeon, maybe even fight a boss, in Starfield you just run around planets that are all empty, then float through a ring like a circus animal, and that's it. Every single time it's the same thing. The planets look the same too. The abilities you get don't even feel memorable or impactful to gameplay, and some were Bethesda bugged, of course. Honestly, a big disappointment I had with this game was the character builds. It felt like you just pick a gun type or starship type and meh. Even environmental design looks like generic AI planet outpost aesthetics. Now they're adding more visually diverse environments, so this game falls under the archetypes of space exploration game and Bethesda RPG. No Man's Sky has better planet exploration, and Fallout is a more fun gun Bethesda RPG in my opinion when it comes to variety and character builds. I think half of the original recording was me ranting about Starfield, so I'm just gonna stop there. Moving on to Insomniac's Spider-Man, the most important superhero series of the modern console generation now that Rocksteady is out of the game.
Marvel's Spider-Man is a good game.
I played all 3 Insomniac Spider-Man games last year, and I played them right after the other, so looking back I can't remember a lot of nuances in the gameplay besides obvious things like gadgets and abilities. All I can say is that every game I played, the gameplay got better for me. Spider-Man PS4 was the game that I played the least of the open world content because all the bases are just waves of enemies and it takes a long time, and getting resources like crime tokens being grindy. But this game has some of the best unlock incentives in the series, since getting suits will unlock you abilities that can be equipped with any suit, and it makes collecting suits that much more rewarding than in Spider-Man 2 where suits are just to look cool. I would say the first Spider-Man is arguably the best story in the series. On to the next game of the Spider-Man series, ranking ever so slightly higher, is Miles Morales. Even though it's a shorter game, I really like the Venom abilities which Spider-Man 2 improved on, and I like how ability cooldowns are tied with your combo count versus just a cooldown timer. Miles's Venom dash makes it that much better to travel the city, and that's another reason why the games kind of rank up higher as the series goes on, because the traversal and side content is better around the city each and every game. This is critical now because the more these games release, the more we feel that open world fatigue. And for the last Spider-Man game, if I have to recommend one, it's gonna be this one, Spider-Man 2. Thanks to combat and traversal with the web wings and being able to slingshot yourself, it makes it so fun to go through the city. The combat is further streamlined in this game. You'll now toss enemies if you hold the web button closer to someone. There's like a proximity webbing now, which is a system I greatly appreciate. Little things like that make combat flow so much more fluid than the other games. The story kept my attention with its themes of villains becoming heroes and heroes becoming villains, and it makes the side content better when these little side stories play into the themes of reforming villains, and some are just straight up heartbreaking. It also has some decently engaging stealth sections with the new broken webline ability. There's a fine line in stealth between fun and annoying, so props to Spider-Man 2 for it not being annoying. So would recommend this one for very fun, flashy combat with abilities that flow well into one another. Not an extreme level of depth with its combat, but there is quite a lot you can do with the tools given, or just button mash if you want to. Another PS5 promo game is next, Final Fantasy VII Integrade.
Final Fantasy VII Integrate DLC is okay.
This sweet little connector between Remake and Rebirth gives more context to Yuffie, and it's a bit of a filler arc for her, but does add some character development. It's only 2 missions and adds a new boss fight, Weiss, for Cloud's VR training. Like Crisis Core, FF7 Integrate is recommended to someone if you really like FF7 world and characters, but if this could be played as a standalone game, it might be the perfect starting point for someone interested in getting into FF7. I had fun with this game, especially seeing the timeless environmental design of Midgar, but I had the most fun playing the Fort Condor tabletop minigames. With Integrate, I just needed a little more bang for your buck. This next game is going to rank to the top of the list and is my personal game of the year of 2023, and that's The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The biggest thing I gave Breath of the Wild credit for was sparking that childlike wonder in gaming, where it feels like anything can happen in this world. And there wasn't the limits of how I think now of games, of the limits of gaming as a medium and design restrictions. Tears of the Kingdom takes that feeling of wonder a mile further in true sequel fashion. Things that play into the wonder are its phenomenal physics, the sense of scale going from sky to underground, and how you can use any items in the Ultra Hand to interact with anything in the world. Seriously, peak action adventure dungeon crawling, iterating over the great games in this saturated genre. Tears of the Kingdom lets you explore in a way that Nintendo could never do before. Usually switching between light and dark world in a Zelda game was a warp. Now you can just physically run or fall into the dark reflection of Hyrule, and I think this is arguably the best open world action adventure game of all time next to Elden Ring. This next game was way better than I thought it would be, and that's Dying Light The Following, which was a very good game. Playing The Following gives the benefit of playing one of the last builds of the game, where they could pump out a lot of content and quality. It was really fun to progress in making stronger weapons and leveling up your parkour. I just wish some of the finishers were in the base kit of your character. Some of them feel essential, like the head stomp. Parkour here is intuitive and satisfying. The virals are a really fun and stressful mechanic, and being chased at night is genuinely intense. A lot of missions ended up being fetch quests, but they actually had decent writing with apocalyptic stories that were high stakes or funny. The big bad of this game is also a lovable asshole, like a discount Far Cry villain in the apocalypse. This game surprised me, and I wouldn't mind playing some of the other Techland zombie games after this. First-person parkour is such a great genre if you can get the movement right, and Dying Light gets it right, being satisfying to jump over zombies and drop kick him in the back of the head. Getting close to the end of the list now, Persona 5 Royale is our next game, and I would recommend this one. You probably already heard tons of glazing for this game, but it's a terrific turn-based RPG, and it's got style, of course. It has a great story of exploring the themes of being able to change at any moment, and I'm glad I played the Royal version. I liked the Royal arc more than the final arc of the original, but Akechi carries the whole third act, to be honest. Gotta love the guy. Personally, I like mainline Shin Megami Tensei more than Persona, but when it comes to the Megaton franchise, Persona 5 is probably the easiest game to recommend to someone new to it. That's why it ranks very high, because it's a good Megaton game and it broke into mainstream and is probably many people's first and only Megaton game. Of course, Joker competing with 2B to be in the most random crossovers possible helps. Persona 5R is the perfect entry point for people curious about the franchise, with its forgiving social links, great levels and bosses, and a talking cat. Next, another Final Fantasy spinoff. Oh boy. Final Fantasy Origin Strangers of Paradise is a good game. It's a meme for sure, but I'm happy to say it's pretty fun too. There's some performance hiccups with this game, but it still provides very smooth action gameplay. I don't know if you can even call this a Souls-like game anymore, as people were saying with Team Ninja's modern action games. I guess the only Souls-like mechanic is having a place to rest and level up that resets enemies like a bonfire from Souls. The combo system with directional inputs changing your combo route is intuitive. You can also choose what abilities to end each combo with, making a very flexible combat system. The gear system is rough though. It's basically like go for higher numbers until you're far enough in the game where you can actually invest in a piece of legendary gear to actually make a character build. I played a bit of Neo After Strangers for the first time, and I see it kind of has a similar gear system. I'm not the biggest fan of Team Ninja's gear system with these pseudo Souls-like games, but this is a very easy game to recommend to someone if they like the combat of Neo, but don't want to manage min-maxing stats every level up. Also, any Final Fantasy fan would like the classic Final Fantasy enemies with a modern Unreal Engine-like graphics. It's like Nintendo hire this guy aesthetic. And our final game is Hi-Fi Rush, which I highly recommend, but with heavy hearts. This was my personal favorite game of 2023. It's a rhythm beat-em-up game, has amazing art style, telegraphing that cartoon, almost comic book aesthetic perfectly in a video game. One of the best cel-shaded games I've ever seen, to be honest. The bosses are a highlight of the game for sure, as well as exploring the levels, finding funny NPCs and collectibles. It's not a long game, but has a lot of post-game content and challenges. This goes to the top of recommended, because now I can't think of the rhythm action game genre without Hi-Fi Rush. DK Jungle Beat clears that genre, by the way, but it's a damn shame that Tango Gameworks has been shut down by Xbox. I would have loved to see a sequel for this, and to push the rhythm combo system even further. Even the movement options like dashing, grappling hook, parrying was all on beat with the rhythm. It was such a satisfying and engaging system. Again, it's such a shame that we may never see a sequel to this gameplay. That's the list. I gotta go to playing games this year, and I gotta get ready for that 2024 tier list. I recorded this video 7 months ago, but I accidentally deleted it when cleaning my PC. And now, as I re-ranked everything over half a year later, my ranking on games have already changed.